Have you ever noticed how much energy you spend resisting reality, fighting what already is, wishing things were different? The Stoics saw this pattern everywhere. They called it the source of all suffering. Most of us live like we're arguing with existence itself. We wake up and immediately catalog what's wrong, the weather, our circumstances, our past, as if complaining could rewrite what's already written. The Stoics noticed something crucial about this war with reality. Every moment you spend wishing things were different is a moment stolen from actually living. It's like trying to swim while holding onto the shore. Amor fati means love of fate, not tolerance, not resignation, love. The Stoics weren't asking you to pretend everything is fine. They were pointing to something far more radical. Think about the last time something went wrong, really wrong. Your first instinct was probably to resist it, to think this shouldn't be happening, but it was happening, and resistance changed nothing except your peace. The Stoics understood that suffering has two layers. There's the event itself, and then there's your resistance to the event. The first you often can't control. The second is entirely your choice. Marcus Aurelius wrote this while ruling an empire during plague and war. Accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny. He wasn't living an easy life. He was choosing a different relationship with difficulty. Most people think acceptance means giving up, becoming passive, letting life happen to you, but the Stoics saw acceptance as the ultimate form of power, the power to choose your response no matter what. When you resist what is, you're living in a fantasy, the fantasy of how things should be. Meanwhile, reality keeps moving forward, and you're stuck arguing with a moment that's already gone. Amor fati asks you to do something uncomfortable, to look at the worst thing that ever happened to you and find a way to be grateful it happened exactly that way, not despite it, because of it. This isn't about toxic positivity. It's not about pretending pain doesn't hurt. The Stoics felt pain deeply. They just refused to add the second arrow of resistance, the arrow you shoot at yourself. Epictetus was born a slave. He had every reason to curse his fate. Instead, he developed a philosophy that freed millions. He couldn't control his chains, but he could control his mind, and that made all the difference. Think about how much mental energy you waste on things that already happened, replaying conversations, rehearsing better responses, building cases for why you were wronged. Energy that could be building your future. The Stoics had a practice called negative visualization. They'd imagine losing everything they had, not to be pessimistic, to remember that everything you have is borrowed, including this moment, including this breath. When you practice amor fati, something shifts in your nervous system. You stop bracing for impact. You stop living in defensive crouch. Your body realizes it doesn't have to fight reality anymore. Most suffering comes from the gap between expectations and reality. You expected life to go one way. It went another. The bigger the gap, the bigger the suffering. Amor fati closes that gap completely. The Stoics weren't passive. Marcus Aurelius led armies. Seneca advised emperors. Epictetus taught students. They engaged fully with life, but they did it without the burden of needing reality to be different than it was. Here's the paradox. When you stop fighting what is, you actually become more capable of changing it, because your energy isn't trapped in resistance. It's available for action, for creation, for actual response. Think about water. It doesn't resist the shape of whatever contains it. It doesn't argue with the riverbank. It flows. And over time, that flowing water shapes mountains. Acceptance isn't weakness. It's how nature works. Every time you say, "Why me?" you're assuming the universe is supposed to make sense to you, that there's some cosmic fairness you're owed. The Stoics knew better. They knew the universe is neutral. Amor fati doesn't mean you don't feel pain. It means you don't add the story that pain shouldn't exist. You feel the grief, the anger, the disappointment, but you don't fight the fact that you're feeling them. The Stoics taught that every obstacle is an opportunity, not in some fake motivational way, but literally, every problem you face is a chance to practice virtue, courage, patience, wisdom, Without obstacles, no practice. Most people spend their lives waiting for the right conditions. When I have more time, when I have more money, when things get easier. The Stoics knew those conditions never come. You work with now. When you practice loving your fate, you stop being a victim of your biography. The traumatic childhood, the bad luck, the unfair circumstances, they happened, they shaped you, and now you get to choose what they mean. The Stoics understood something modern psychology is just rediscovering. You can't control what happens, but you can control the story you tell about what happens, and that story becomes your life. Have you noticed how the same event can destroy one person and strengthen another? It's not the event that determines the outcome. It's the relationship to the event. Amor fati is that relationship transformed. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Your obstacles aren't blocking your path. They are your path, the path to who you're becoming." Most people treat their lives like rough drafts, waiting for the final version. When things are perfect, when they are ready, the Stoics knew this is the final version. This imperfect, messy, difficult moment, this is it. When you resist reality, you're essentially saying you know better than the entire chain of causation that led to this moment. Every atom, every choice, every chance event, you're arguing with physics. Amor fati is a practice, not a destination. Some days you'll manage it, some days you'll fall back into resistance. The Stoics weren't perfect either. They just kept returning to the practice, again and again. Think about your biggest regret, the thing you wish you could undo. Now imagine accepting that it happened exactly as it needed to, that even that mistake was part of the path. How would that change you? The Stoics had a phrase, "The obstacle is the way, not around the way, not despite the way. The obstacle itself is the path forward. Your difficulty is your curriculum. Your pain is your teacher." Most people think strength means not breaking. The Stoics knew strength means breaking and reassembling yourself stronger, like bones that heal thicker at the fracture. Amor fati is that healing. When you stop resisting what is, you gain access to a deeper peace, not the peace of getting everything you want, the peace of wanting everything you get, even the hard parts, especially the hard parts. Seneca wrote from exile, Marcus from war, Epictetus from slavery. They didn't develop this philosophy in comfort. They forged it in exactly the circumstances they wished were different, and it transformed them. Every moment you spend wishing the past were different is a moment you can't spend creating the future. The past is done, it's sealed. Your power lies entirely in this breath, this choice, this response. The Stoics practiced a daily exercise. Before bed, they'd review the day without judgment. Not "I should have done better," just "this is what happened." Observation without resistance, seeing without fighting. Amor fati asks you to become an artist of necessity, to take what you're given and make something beautiful, not someday when conditions improve. Now, with these materials, this canvas, this broken, perfect life. Most people think acceptance means settling. The Stoics knew it means the opposite. When you accept what is, you can finally see clearly, and clear seeing is the beginning of wise action, not reactive scrambling. Think about how much energy goes into maintaining the story that you're a victim, the rehearsing, the retelling, the gathering of evidence. Now imagine redirecting all that energy toward building, creating, becoming. The Stoics understood that you don't get to choose your cards, but you do get to play them, and a master player with bad cards will beat a poor player with good cards. Every time. Amor fati is mastery. When you love your fate, you stop living in conditional future. "I'll be happy when," "I'll start living after." The Stoics knew there is no after, there's only this, and this can be enough. This is enough. Marcus Aurelius asked himself each morning, what if I loved everything that happens today, not tolerated, not endured, loved? As if each moment was exactly what he ordered, even the difficult ones. The practice isn't about never feeling disappointment, it's about not adding a second layer. The disappointment you feel about feeling disappointed, The suffering about suffering, that layer is optional. That's where freedom lies. When you resist reality, you're in a constant state of low-grade war. Your nervous system never rests. Your mind never settles. Acceptance is the peace treaty, not with your enemies, with existence itself. The Stoics knew that most of what we call tragedy is just life being life. Things change, people leave, bodies age, nothing stays. The tragedy isn't in the change, it's in expecting permanence where none exists. Amor fati doesn't mean you don't have preferences. You can prefer health, prefer comfort, prefer success, but you don't need them. Your peace doesn't depend on getting them. That's the difference, that's the freedom. Think about the last time you got exactly what you wanted. How long did the satisfaction last? Days, hours, minutes? The Stoics knew that getting what you want doesn't end wanting. Amor fati does. When you practice loving your fate, you start to see how everything connected. The rejection that led to the opportunity, the loss that created space for growth, not in some mystical way, in actual traceable causation. The Stoics taught that the universe is one living system. You're not separate from it, you're an expression of it. When you resist your circumstances, you're resisting yourself, fighting your own nature, your own unfolding. Most suffering comes from the belief that life should be fair, should make sense, should reward good behavior. The Stoics had no such illusions. They saw reality clearly, and in that clarity found peace. Epictetus said, "Don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do." It sounds like a riddle, but it's the most practical advice ever given. It's the end of suffering. When you love your fate, you stop postponing your life. Stop waiting for permission, for the right moment, for better circumstances. You realize this moment, exactly as it is your life, not preparation, the actual thing. The Stoics practiced contemplating death daily, not morbidly, as a reminder that everything is temporary. This breath, this day, this problem. When you remember nothing lasts, you stop clinging, you start living. Amor fati is the opposite of nihilism. Nihilism says nothing matters. Amor fati says everything matters, every moment, every choice, every breath. But you don't need it to be different than it is. Most people think happiness comes from getting what you want. The Stoics knew it comes from wanting what you have, not as consolation prize, as genuine recognition that this, exactly this, is what you need right now. When you practice amor fati, you stop being haunted by alternate timelines, the life you could have lived, the person you could have been. You're here, this timeline, this life, and it's enough. The Stoics understood that control is an illusion. You can't control outcomes, can't control other people, can't even fully control your own thoughts, but you can control your response, and response is everything. Marcus wrote, "Confine yourself to the present, not because the future doesn't matter, but because the future is made of present moments. This one, then this one, then this one, each one accepted, each one lived." When you resist what is, you create a split in yourself. Part of you in fantasy, part in reality. That split is exhausting. Amor fati reunites you, brings all your energy into this moment, undivided. The Stoics knew that wisdom isn't knowing what will happen, it's knowing how to respond to whatever happens. You can't predict the storm, but you can learn to sail in any weather. That's the practice. Amor fati doesn't remove pain, it removes the suffering about the pain, the story that it shouldn't hurt, that you shouldn't be struggling. The Stoics knew pain is inevitable, but the second layer is optional. When you love your fate, you stop comparing your chapter 20 to someone else's chapter 1. Your struggle to their highlight reel. You're in your story, they are in theirs. Both are unfolding exactly as they must. The Stoics practiced gratitude not for what went right, but for everything, the obstacles, the failures, the losses, because all of it taught them something, shaped them, made them who they became. Most people think freedom means getting to do whatever you want. The Stoics knew freedom means not needing anything to be different. When your peace doesn't depend on circumstances, you're finally free. Seneca wrote this from exile, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a person perfected without trials. He wasn't saying trials are fun. He was saying they're necessary, the very thing that shapes you. When you practice amor fati, you stop living in the gap between what is and what you wish was. That gap is where all suffering lives. Close the gap, accept what is, and suddenly you're here, fully, finally. The Stoics understood that you're not owed an easy life. You're not owed fairness. You're not owed anything. And in that recognition is liberation. Because if you're owed nothing, then everything becomes a gift. Amor fati asks you to become amor, to love, not selective love for the good parts, but the fierce love that includes everything, the love that sees the necessity in the difficult, the beauty in the broken. Marcus Aurelius died in a military camp during plague. His last words weren't about regret or wishes for a different life. They were about acceptance, about having lived exactly the life he was given. That's amor fati. When you love your fate, you stop asking why me and start asking what now. The first question has no answer. The second creates your life. One is paralysis, the other is power. The Stoics taught that every moment is training. For what? For the next moment. Life is one continuous practice, and the practice is this: accepting what is, responding with virtue, then accepting the next thing. Amor fati doesn't promise you'll never feel pain. It promises that pain will stop being the enemy. It becomes information, feedback, part of the process, not something wrong, just something real. When you practice loving your fate, you realize you've been carrying two burdens: the actual difficulty and the weight of wishing it wasn't difficult. The second burden is always heavier and completely unnecessary. The Stoics knew that acceptance isn't defeat. It's the beginning of real power. When you stop fighting what is, all that energy becomes available for what comes next. Resistance is exhaustion. Acceptance is energy. Think about the story of your life. Now imagine telling it as if every single thing happened exactly as it needed to, even the mistakes, especially the mistakes. How would that version sound? That's amor fati speaking. Marcus wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking, not in your circumstances, not in your luck, in your relationship to what is. That's where happiness lives." When you love your fate, you stop being surprised by difficulty, stop being offended by obstacles. You expected them because you understand that growth requires resistance, strength requires weight, wisdom requires mistakes. The practice is simple, not easy, but simple. When something happens you don't like, pause, notice the resistance rising, then ask, what if this is exactly what needed to happen? What if this is perfect? The Stoics didn't promise happiness. They promised something better: equanimity, the steady state that remains regardless of circumstances, not high when things go well, not low when they don't, just steady, just present. Amor fati is ultimately about trust. Not trust that everything will work out the way you want. Trust that everything is working out exactly as it must. That you're part of a pattern too large to see, but perfect in its unfolding.